On this side note here with this verse in 1 Corinthians 16, we see that the Apostle Paul's instruction in this particular case, he encourages the church to prepare it beforehand so that when he visits the church, there will be no collecting. In other words, it is advisable for Christians that you should be planning your financial giving to serve the Lord, put it in your budget. It is advisable rather than doing it ad hoc. If you did it ad hoc, it would not be wrong. But here we see Paul says, prepare it. What does he say here? Each of you is to put something aside and store it so that there will be no collecting when I come. You deal with it because when he visits the church, he wants to spend the most amount of time fellowshipping with God's people, praying, teaching the Bible. Okay? So is the financial offering important to Paul? It was in the sense that he was encouraging Christians to offer willingly, but it wasn't so important that it took the central place of the gathering of God's people. The gathering of God's people is for worship, God's word, prayers, praises. And finally, Christians are invited to give sacrificially. This is Jesus' comment on the poor widow. Mark chapter 12, verse 44. For they all contributed out of their abundance, but the poor widow, out of her poverty, has put in everything she had, all she had to live on, and Jesus commended her. In the eyes of people, we tend to look at the net amount that people give. Wow, that person is generous. Wow, these celebrities give so much. What does Jesus look at? How much does she have? Very little. And she gave, and it hurt financially speaking to her. And Jesus commended her. And therefore, the principle is this. Christians are invited to give sacrificially so that it would hurt your budget, if you will. It means that when you think about your financial giving as an act of worship to God, we should put more energy into living every part of our life to honor God, especially the moral aspects of our life. Apply specifically to finances, giving 10%, even though you're not obligated to, you're doing it willingly and joyfully, it is an act of worship. But if you did that and you gave to the church, but you were dishonest in how you earn your money, maintain your money, remember the sermon on Amos? We talked about the practical implications. So that is very dishonoring to God. We're not going to read the passage in Acts chapter 5, but there is a story in the early church regarding a Christian couple called Ananias and Sapphira. What happened there was that the church was practicing free will generosity, and some of them owned land and houses. This particular Christian couple was very wealthy. They sold a piece of land and earned, let's just say, $2 million. They brought, let's just say, to make it more concrete, it doesn't say these numbers in the Bible, but I want to make it more concrete. They told the apostles, oh, this is $1 million, and it came from what I sold from the house. The house actually worth 2. And then they were disciplined and actually put to death for it. What does that say? Well, so if you think about it, humanly speaking, from a church perspective, shouldn't you say, wait a minute, this couple gave us $1 million for gospel work. They weren't honest about how much, come on, it's $1 million, we can hire so much staff, we can spread our women's ministry, we can finally change our fellowship hall into the gym that we always wanted for our kids. Come on, it's $1 million. But God says, no, dishonesty, no. Because to God, acting more honest, acting with integrity, acting righteously is more important than ceremony. That's my point here. We need to focus more on how we live and our character, although the ceremonial aspect of worshiping God is also important.